Hey, thanks for tuning in to Between the Lines podcast. I'm Alex Woods, a former ICU nurse and founder of U.S. Legal Nurse Consultants. This show uses medical legal cases to explore judgment, strategy, and decision making. But what we're really talking about is how people think when there isn't a clear answer. The stories come from medicine and law right now, but the patterns, the missteps, and the strategy, it applies everywhere. This is about reading between the lines and knowing what to do with what you find. So let's get into it. Angela, I want to get back to what we were talking about. This is Angela Bruno. She is a personal injury attorney out in California. And Angela, I'm going to have you introduce yourself, tell me more about yourself. But before this, we were actually talking about women and women in law and women in business and entrepreneurship. So first, I want to ask you, what drew you into personal injury, med mal? Was it a specific moment, a case you knew when you were 5 years old, whatever it was? And then let's go back into what we were talking about. I think it'll be a good segue into what we were talking about.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, my name's Angela Bruno. My law firm's Bruno Nalu. I'm partners with my husband, and we started our firm in 2014. And basically, if we want to go way back, like I never actually thought I'd be a lawyer. Like I wasn't trying to go to law school to become a lawyer. I was always going to law school with this idea that I was going to negotiate contracts in the business arena. So it was a stepping stone in terms of something I needed to do to get where I was really trying to go. So my background, or I guess not my background, but my own personal goals were all about business. Like I have always been obsessed with business. I like the idea of like creating something, growing something, having something on my own. I never wanted to work for someone. So law school happened is a weird series of events. And then when I got out of law school, because I was naive and thought I could just jump into negotiating contracts for huge corporations, I learned quickly like the only people that were going to hire me were law firms. And so my bubble was burst quite a bit, to be honest with you, because up until that point, I think everything I had sought to achieve happened. I had a full ride to UCLA. Then I went and worked. Then I went to law school. Like everything was lining up exactly as I predicted. And then when I got out of law school and it didn't line up, it was hard. I'm not going to lie. Like I was at a crossroads of like, so now I have all these degrees and the job I thought I would be doing kind of doesn't exist for a 27-year-old with a law degree. That's not who they're looking to negotiate their contracts. And I'm female. So I had to rebrand. That's just really the reality of what happened. Before the word pivot was popular, I figured out how to pivot. So I worked at a firm and just sort of pretended that I was going to be a lawyer. And then when you pretend long enough, you become a lawyer. And then you learn, right? So the fact that I own a law firm with my husband doing personal injury now is not surprising. But if you talked to me when I was 25, that's not where I thought things would go.
That's amazing. So, have you always been ambitious, like since a young kid?
Yeah, I would say like even when I was really young, I wanted to be an adult. Like, most kids like want to be kids.
Yeah.
I was like looking to be an adult from a very young age. Like I would always say like I want to get this going. Like I didn't know where I was trying to get. I just felt like I was being stifled. Like I just needed to get to the next part. And that's a good quality in some ways. In some ways, it's a little bit, you should appreciate where you are in the moment. But I definitely was an old soul looking to achieve. Like I knew I was trying to do something and I was trying to get there. And I felt like things were in my way, like school and college. Not that I didn't have fun, but I just knew there was something else I was after. So I always was really pushing myself, I think because I didn't know how it was all going to play out. It wasn't a situation where I was 5 years old going, I'm going to be a lawyer and this is what's going to happen. It was much different than that. It was like, I'm going to do something and I don't know what it is. And so I was an econ major in undergrad. So that opened doors to a lot of business opportunities. Then I go to law school, that opened doors to a lot of law firms. But I could still not have told you at 28 to 30 that I would be exclusively practicing PI and have my own law firm. That is where everything sort of changed in my early 30s. And then it all made sense. But I couldn't have predicted it.
Do you feel like you had to change your mindset that, everything went exactly as planned? And then when you were 27 and it didn't, was there a point where you had to talk to yourself and ask yourself, like, okay, maybe there's a reason why I'm not supposed to go down my predicted schedule planned path, and there's a reason why I am going to pivot?
I had a lot of talks with myself. I mean, there was a lot of doubt that I messed up because I struggled with whether I would go to business school or law school, or you can do the JD MBA. And so I definitely thought maybe I messed it all up. I should have done the combo or I should have got my MBA. And it was not a time where I thought it wasn't like, everything happens for a reason and it's all going to work out. I mean, I obviously believed everything would work out, but I didn't know how. And I definitely didn't think I didn't think I thought I needed to make new choices, which I did, I guess. So that's the truth. I didn't just, I guess a principle that I've always had is just always keep moving. I never stop. I just can't stop. And I feel like when people stop and you think too long, you're losing so much everything, leverage, time, momentum. So I always felt like, okay, even though this isn't probably where I'm supposed to be, that's why I joined a law firm, right? And I just kept going. I mean, I could have just stopped. I could have just kept trying to interview at different corporations and, kind of pushed that narrative. But instead, I just took the opportunities that were in front of me. And I think that's a big secret to success is like walk through every door. Like it doesn't mean you have to stay there forever. Just do it. Someone offered me a job, I took it. And then you'll figure it out. But if you stop and you try to think about it forever and ever and ever, like 5 years could go by, 2 years could go by, 6 months could go by, and you've made no decisions. So that's, I guess, my way of dealing with the crossroads. It wasn't that I was like, I know there's a reason for this. It was like, I don't get the reason and I don't like any of this. I was not happy about it, but I just took look, everyone was like, she graduated from a top law school. She'll be a great lawyer. So I leaned into it and I was like, yep, that's why I went. So if you interviewed me back then, I would tell you I wanted to be a lawyer. It wasn't the truth. I really didn't want to, right? I was looking to do something totally different.
I think a lot of people are scared to do, and they're waiting for the right moment. And you said success like speed.
Yeah.
And I think that's speed, money like speed too.
Money like
And
speed.
right. And so when you were feeling that momentum, there's times that I've had this too. And I'm sure a lot of people, how do you combat that? Like where you're like, oh my gosh, I am getting momentum. Did you ever feel like an imposter syndrome where you're like, whoa, 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 let's slow down? Or did you lean fully into it?
So I think my imposter syndrome maybe is a little bit different than other people. I have it, trust me. Like we all have it. Mine came much earlier in the process. So, look, I'm applying at law firms where I had no interest in actually being a lawyer. So there was massive imposter syndrome, but I was like, I'm doing this. Like I have to get some skills. So that was hard at first, but then you learn it and you're good at it and you get over it. The bigger issue I had is when I met Keith and he was adamant we start a law firm together. And I was scared to death. I mean, that was the hardest decision. Marrying him was the easiest decision. Starting a law firm with him was like crippling anxiety.
Really?
Yeah, like I don't think I've had to make a harder decision than that because I felt like I had already built my own reputation. I had built my career, without him. I didn't know him. And he was, several years ahead of me in his career and had a name for himself and created, quite a buzz in the community about himself. So he was like more of a big player. And I didn't want to ride his coattails. It's just not my personality. And I didn't want money, success,
Mhm.
careers to interfere with our relationship because I liked our relationship how it was. And I was deathly afraid that if we started a firm together, like the relationship would suffer, like the actual personal relationship. I didn't doubt that the firm would be successful, but I doubted that the relationship could sustain it and that it would overall be a good idea. So we met and started dating and like very early on. I mean, I'm talking like weeks. He was talking about starting a firm together. And I did not have any interest in that whatsoever. And so I would say, oh, like, maybe like after we're engaged, and then, he proposes in 6 seconds. And then I'd say, okay, well, like after the wedding, because like there's a lot going on. So like we should really wait until the wedding. And so then the wedding happens in 6 months. And then we're married. And he's like, Angela, we're married. Like you said, we could start a firm together. And I was like, well, but we pushed our honeymoon out. I wish I was making this up, but I'm not. So our honeymoon was in September. And so then we started the firm in October. But I bought myself like a year plus
Mm-hmm.
because I was panic stricken. Again, not because of like, could we create a firm that would be successful? I thought like the answer was yes. I just didn't know if it would be compatible with like the other parts of life I wanted. Because I do think, you have to balance like everything. It's not just about your career, but then it's also about like what lifestyle do you want? And um, I was just nervous for us to like both be giving up the autonomy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're very different lawyers and we're very different people. And so then, put these ideas together where you're working together all day and then you're going home together. Like I just didn't understand how that would be smart. And this gives you some insight into him. I mean, he was so clear-minded that this was the best thing we could ever do, that it was hard not to be convinced by him. Like
Mm-hmm.
if someone is so confident, it made me think like I probably am not seeing this correctly. So finally I was just like, all right, I'm not gonna fight you anymore because like you've gone through all of my hurdles. So let's just do this. And then I jumped in with both feet, and it was like there was no going back. Like I can't explain how clear it was the
Wow.
minute that firm opened, like this is what's happening. And it's been great. And it didn't oddly, the impact on the relationship has been zero. I mean, I can say that with confidence. The things I were worried about is not what happened at all. And not to say like having a firm with your husband isn't difficult. It's hard having a firm in general, but it is weird that like really what I was so worried about, it has never happened. And there's been different challenges, obviously, but not the ones I saw coming.
My mentor literally just told me this today. It's funny that you said that, that the things that you worried about like didn't happen. And, I
Mhm.
was called him and vented about a couple things. And he's like, you're worrying about something that like you don't need to be worrying about. Like,
Mhm.
let's come up with systems and processes for that, and then we'll eliminate it. Like, and we'll provide a solution. So
Yeah.
don't worry about things that haven't happened or you're
Yeah.
making stories up in your head. And so with okay, I've got to ask this because it's a challenge. It's something that I've battled with. Did you always want to keep your birth name, your maiden name? Because I think for me, I had my maiden name is Alex Parker, and I love that name. And then
Cute.
I got married, and it was Alex Woods. And then as a woman, right, a man doesn't ever have to worry about a name or rebranding in that sense, but we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And then if you get divorced or whatever happens, you lose your spouse dies or whatever happens, there's a decision on it's not just a name. Do I go back to my maiden name or do I continue to keep this name that I built myself on?
Yeah.
Was there ever a worry like that or a thought in your head that you're like, I built myself on this name? Was it hard to let go?
So it's really interesting you say that. So our law firm's name is Bruno Nalu, which is Bruno is Keith's last name and Nalu is my maiden name. And
I did
so,
not know that.
yeah, so when we got married, I mean, I will say I am a pretty traditional person, and there was no question in my mind that I was changing my name to Bruno.
Right.
But that's just my personality. It didn't really
Yeah.
have, I had obviously already had a career as Angela Nalu. Everyone knew me as Nalu, but there wasn't like even a hint of doubt that
Yeah.
I'm changing my name to Bruno. That's what it is, and moving on. And so I assumed when we started the firm, we would be like the Bruno Group or Bruno and Bruno or some version of that. And he was adamant that it's Bruno Nalu.
Wow.
It was funny because I kept fighting him on it, saying, it's, I've lived my whole life with the last name Nalu. You don't understand. People cannot pronounce it, and it drives me insane.
Yeah.
So it's 4 letters. It's Nalu. It should be pretty phonetic, and not difficult. But I've gone, at that point, 33 years as Nalu, and no one can say it.
Yeah.
And he was like, "That's ridiculous. It's so, easy to say. It just slips off the tongue. Bruno Nalu. It's perfect." I was like, "Okay." So we start Bruno Nalu, and no one can say Nalu. And he's like, "We've been at this for almost 12 years and no one can say Nalu." And I was like, "I tried to tell you."
Yeah.
But it was
That's
sweet. It was a
that
nice joke.
is so amazing that he was so aware of that though too.
So, and my dad died when I was 18.
Mm.
And so I think for him, it was like a way to kind of keep it in the family, which I thought was, I mean, Keith is the sweetest human being on the planet. So again, it was like kind of a similar idea where he was so persuasive that this has to be the law firm name, that I just kind of said, "Okay, I don't think it's the best idea, but I'm not going to keep fighting you." And that's really been a thread, I guess, that's gone through all of the years of our firm together. If one of us is so strongly positioned on something, the other person will always capitulate. Like we really don't argue about big concepts. It's like, if it means that much to you, then the name's Bruno Nalu. Like, it just doesn't mean that much to me, and no one's going to be able to say it. And, okay, so we move on. But that's really the same thing we do with cases. We get a case, we don't see cases the same all the time. But if I say, like, "We cannot win this case, there is no winning it," and he's like, "All right." I mean, like, you're very passionate that this is not going to happen, even if he thinks maybe we could. With the weaker party just caves to the stronger party, and it's worked out very well for us. I'm not saying that's a strategy for everyone, but that's how it's worked for us. And it's nice because you feel like when you really feel strongly about something, the other person's not going to fight you, which is a
Mhm.
good feeling. You don't want to always be arguing, right?
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, I'm going to say this, and then we're going to get into it for the next 5 years." We don't have that dynamic.
I'm so glad that I had both of you on. Like, obviously, I had Keith a few weeks ago and you because you don't hear about this too often. And when you do, I think it's really important to highlight it
I mean, like a
because,
husband, wife, or
yeah, a team and how you guys have managed that. And I think it's beyond professional. It's how you guys are as people too, and the characteristics that you have.
I'm glad you said that because, there are a lot of husband wife teams out there, but more often than not, it's really a husband. And then there's a woman who, maybe did marketing or wasn't
Yeah.
a practicing lawyer. They were
Yep.
doing something else, which is totally great too. I mean, you have to build a business with a lot of different talents. I think what was sort of unique to us is that we were both practicing lawyers, separately before we ever even met each other,
Hmm.
and then joined to do a totally different practice area than either of us had ever done. So it was like we were coming in with a clean slate, but with both very strong backgrounds and ideas of how to do a case, the way we talk to clients. Like, we had already built all of our branding and personality and reputation. And then so to come together and like really have it fit together like puzzle pieces seems to be a more unique situation
Mhm.
than not.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I'm just glad that I've seen both perspectives now with it. Angela, walk me through one of your most complex cases and what made it challenging legally, medically, or both. And I think there was a case that you mentioned just recently that you did.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
There's, I mean, there's always like this handful of cases that I'm like, God, there's just so many interesting components. So recently we did a case involving a celebrity, which of course I have to be very careful about what I say and the way I frame things, and I err on the side of caution. So you're not going to get too many juicy details.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that when you have a case against a celebrity, the stakes are so high. We've done so many high risk cases. We've done cases with a lot of public attention, you know, ones where we had to have, kind of PR campaigns behind them. So we're not shy away from that type of attention. The celebrity component of it changed the way we really did everything. And I think that's what was so striking to me is we actually had to use a lot of Keith's background with criminal defense work that we ordinarily don't have to use. And it was just a really fun case in the sense of like being so we had to be so more strategic than we've ever had to be because of the fact that it was a celebrity and the consequences that were going to come of it if we didn't.
You
Kate,
bring on a different person with this because it involves so much strategy.
we didn't. Did do a lot more investigation of our own client than we've ever done. That was the part that was like very interesting to me, and I wouldn't have known how to navigate that without Keith and him having the background that he has. This was not a criminal crossover case. It was exclusively a personal injury case, but it did involve some potential police issues. And so navigating that with a celebrity involved, because the celebrity had so much sophisticated players on his team, I'll say that. And so having to jump through those hoops and just having, it's kind of the classic situation we're always in where we're plaintiff's counsel and we don't have the white shoe law firm with 900 staff and a million people to do research for us. It's like we have to do it all on our own. We're always used to being in that position where our back's up against a wall. We don't have the money, we don't have the time, we don't have the resources. Same situation, except now you have the risk of the media attention. And that was a huge issue, that was a shield and a sword on both sides. And tiptoeing around that was challenging. And just, it's not a case that you can call your friend and say, what do you think of this? I mean, you cannot speak the words. I mean, that's how I take it. That's
Wow.
the level that I felt. This had to stay within these four walls. And really, Keith and I were the only ones dealing with the case and talking about the case because anything getting leaked was going to cause a problem. And so I have never dealt with a high profile case in that way. And, a lot of high profile cases have high profile attention, so you can talk all you want. Whereas, like, this was not a situation where that could happen.
Wow.
And so I learned a lot about when there's a celebrity or someone with, it doesn't even have to be a celebrity, but it could be someone with just an independent insurance policy that has their own team of lawyers. The lengths that they will go to protect their client is not like a typical insurance company. So it was super interesting. I learned a ton. And, that's where it's kind of cool that Keith did have a different life and a different practice before we started together, because we both, use those experiences to our advantage. And it's been massively helpful to not have started in PI from day one, right? You kind of bring a little bit more to the table. And I will definitely never forget that case.
So wait, so what happened? Are you allowed to say?
I can say that there's out of court settlement.
Okay.
So I do kind of circle back. I always thought I would be like the deal maker,
Yeah.
negotiator. That's my background. It's what I love doing. So we ended up in mediation that was going horrifically bad. Like, I can't even explain. I was actually in this room. I had requested for the air conditioning to be on because, you have to do that on a Saturday. They didn't turn the air conditioning on. I mean, I was literally sweating because it was hot in here, but I was also sweating because it was going so bad. So you're in this hot box of a conference room on the 11th floor, dying of, like, you're going to die of heat stroke.
Whoa.
Nothing's going well. Everyone is unhinged. And it's kind of my same philosophy. Like, I just was not going to stop. I was not going to not settle this case. There's a momentum in life. And if you feel it and you know it, then you can't you can't stop. There's some cases that have to wrap up the moment there's an opportunity. Other cases you can drag off for 3-4 weeks and it'll be fine, but you have to, be very measured and calculated about that. And I knew with everything we had going on leading up to this moment, and this moment, everything was falling apart. I had to pull out every negotiating tool I had. And I will give myself credit. I settled that case and I am still very proud of it. Like, it was just a win. Yeah.
Was there a point, obviously there, but then that you've had to learn discerning when to say, hey, we need to settle, or hey, we are going to keep going and we're going to drag this out because we know how much value it's worth? Was there a turning point? And you kind of explained it a little bit, but how do you know like whether to say, hey, we're settling. Let's
Right.
take this. What's the discernment that you've had to learn to do that?
And so I feel like I give this advice a lot. It is not taken. So I hope someone out there takes this piece of advice. It's probably my number one piece of advice. Obviously, I'm not talking about the beginning of your career because you're still figuring things out, but assuming you're a couple years into your career, I can tell you with 100% accuracy at this point what cases should settle and what should go to trial. And it is a lot of case evaluation from the minute the client walks through the door till the minute I set it up for mediation, or I mean, typically you're almost always going to mediation. Now, whether it's successful or not is a different story. But there are cases that are so ripe for trial and they're so rare. So knowing what those cases are, you hold them and you cherish them and you grow them to trial. And I know how to sit through a mediation and be very polite and make sure this doesn't settle. And then I know how to go to mediation, and I know with every breath in me, it needs to settle. It might not settle that day. It might take a few more days, it might take a few more weeks, but you should know once you walked into mediation, I mean, you should be very clear how much this case is worth, what the ranges you're going to settle in, what your bottom line is. And if you don't hit those numbers, you walk. And what people do in real life, because they don't listen to this advice, is they walk in with a vague idea of what should happen, a moving target of their baseline, and they decide that they're going to use this mediation as like a fact gathering opportunity, which is a recipe for disaster because you have to be committed to your number. And I just can't emphasize that enough. If you've evaluated your case the entire time you've had it, and I'm telling you, like the whole time, every email, every exchange, every new piece of information, you're turning in your mind like, okay, this might push it more towards a $200,000 case. Oh, bad fact, it's going to reduce the value of it. And you're doing this the whole time in your mind. You know, you don't have to talk to the client about your every thought, but you're calculating in your mind, what do I think this is worth? That by the time you go to mediation, that number should be tight. I mean,
Wow.
you should be able to say in your own mind, okay, it's a $250,000 case. If we get close, we got to wrap it up. Or, you know, it's really only a $20,000 case and it just needs to be done. There's no room. And people don't go into mediation like that. They look for the mediator to guide them. They look for the other side to give them facts that would either strengthen or weaken their argument. And then they turn to their client for the first time ever and basically try to explain to them what the case value is. And you just cannot do that. You have to be, you know, the words I use is like, you have to always be in the power position. You have to walk into that room. And I mean that like every day, all day, every single second of your life. But for this example, you need to be in the power position. You walk in, everyone's looking to you for what the case value is. Now, there's obviously always going to be a situation. No one's perfect. I don't evaluate everything perfectly. You learn a new fact that day and it changes your position. That is fine, but you're changing your position because of new information. You're not changing it because of something you already knew, but just misevaluated. And that's where like the lead up to the resolution of a case has to be thought about endlessly. And I beg people to have a trial lawyer on speed dial because I can tell you, as the one who settles almost all of our cases, 95%, I can tell you the case value of every case. If someone called me, I'd tell them, yeah, I think it's worth this much. And then if you call Keith, he can tell you what a jury trial best case scenario, worst case scenario, middle of the road scenario would be. Wouldn't you want to know that on every case? I mean, I know it about every case because I work with someone that tells me this is what will happen if we go to trial. Because the way he views a case is through the lens of trial. The way I view a case is through the lens of negotiating.
Wow.
And what will move the needle in negotiations is not what's is 180 what will move it in trial. They're not the same. And so you need both ends of the spectrum, right? Here's my best case at trial. Here's my best case if I settle. And then what's the in between and what's worth it? And how do I evaluate that risk?
Mm,
All of that should be known before you go into mediation. And then you're unbothered, right? Then you go into
brilliant.
mediation and you're very committed to your number.
It's brilliant. So when you said that it's rare, but when you know you have a case that'll go to trial,
Mhm.
when a case comes into your guys' office, do you and Keith both look at it and say, "Hey, this is going to go to trial"?
100%.
Really?
And if it doesn't go to trial, it means we got such a high astronomical number we never saw coming that we settle. And that does happen. But I'm telling you, that's the best case scenario. That's the dream come true moment where it's like we want to and are salivating to go to trial and they offer so much money, we don't go. Also rare, but it does happen. But most of the time, 80% of the time, when we target a case as a trial case, it will go to trial.
Phenomenal. And
Yeah.
so when you guys decide that in the beginning, when you evaluate that case and you're like, it's going to trial, do you immediately get your resources on board?
Oh yeah. I mean, we really treat every case, quote, as if it's going to trial, but mentally we know it's not.
Okay.
That's really how we do every case. It goes to the same format, same machine that we've created because we don't want to, any shoe to drop. But there is it's on a track and then it deviates. Once we know, okay, like we're all talking the same numbers, we all can tell this is going to, settle because what you don't want to do is spend 20, 30, 40, 50, 200, 500 grand on a case that you could have settled. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. So you have to be doing the math. You can't just push everything towards trial because it's very expensive when you could have gotten the same result for your client 2 years earlier and 200 grand less money. So
Yeah.
that's where it does deviate. The beginning phases, it's all the same. But once you start having to evaluate risk and putting, your money should make money. If it's not going to make money, then you shouldn't be putting your money into it, right? So that's where it will change courses and then kind of becomes, I don't want to say this, but more of my case versus a Keith case.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about negotiation,
Mhm.
what kind of tools do you think attorneys should learn? Like, are there books? Are there podcasts? Like, where do you learn your negotiation skills? And obviously, it's important because you go into mediation and you have to learn. I mean, is it like psychology where you're reading someone? Like you said, you go into mediation prepared and you know the
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah.
But not every negotiation, I'm sure, goes the way you anticipate it, where it's like, he says this, I say this, he says this, great, we're good to go.
Right.
Where did you learn your negotiation skills, and what would you tell the younger attorneys on the importance of negotiation?
Yeah. So I spent 3 years in law school studying negotiation and mediation. Like that's the truth. And that's a lot of time to spend in that subject area when nobody else does. There were like 15 of us.
Oh,
And
interesting. Okay, I
yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah. So we, I have a unique background in that I probably have more practice in negotiations than anyone I've probably ever met. And so I don't want to brush over that because it was instrumental to my success. Practicing how to negotiate for 3 years is nothing I can replicate through a book or a seminar.
Mhm.
Uh,
It's the reps.
it's the repetition. You got to get to bat and you got to keep hitting. And that's how you start seeing what works. That's how I'll give you a very poignant example. People have told me my whole life, um, you know, it's really hard to read you. And I mean, when I was little, when I was older, the whole, just they couldn't read me. And to me, I just found that really hard to understand because I'm painfully honest, painfully honest, which is also 100% true. So how can you not read me? But I say exactly what I mean, and I'm way too straightforward. So I just felt like people were just misreading me. That was my conclusion. Like, that's odd because I'm telling you exactly what I think. So I go to law school and I'm taking these negotiation classes and they video everything. I have 3 years of video of me and they play it back. And so a lot of what you're doing are these fake negotiations, right? There's a scenario, you have teams on both sides, and then you're in a mediation and you're arguing for your client. And they're videoing it so you can see what you look like and what you're saying. Does it match your facial expression? Are you signaling, some stress or fear, or are you coming off authentic so that you can kind of pick up on the way you are? And I watched the first video. I'm literally just got chills. I'm not even kidding. I didn't even recognize myself. I'm like, who is that? You couldn't read me, what everyone had been saying.
Whoa.
Exactly. That's not who I think I am. That's not who I see in me. I feel all the feelings. I think it's all on my face. I think everybody knows exactly what I'm saying.
Well, what was it that you identified?
I identified how unbelievably guarded I can be, that I never, ever understood in my whole life. It's not something I saw in myself. And so seeing myself on camera, I mean, it was a lightning bolt moment of you have got, if that's what you want to give across, then keep doing what you're doing, right? But there are plenty of times that's not what you want to come across. And so learning in that way what I physically look like was extremely helpful to changing the way I do things because, like I said, sometimes that's a great quality and that's the way you want to come off. But a lot of times that's not the right strategy. And you need to, if you're trying to give off camaraderie and working together, I have to really exaggerate my emotions. It's not exaggerated to the other side, but in my own mind, it is a very different feeling. And so learning those skills are so unique to me. I can't just teach a seminar on that. It won't apply to anyone else.
Yeah.
And so I tell people, I get it's weird, but you have to set up your video and you need to do podcasts like this and you need to see yourself on camera because that is more the truth than what you think is happening in your mind. Because your mind is probably racing and you have opinions and judgments that just are not what's coming across. And so that's where it's like you're developing, skill sets by knowing exactly the message you're sending, not what you think you're sending, which is critical. I mean, that's the game. That's the whole game. And that's life, right? Like, so I have to walk around life knowing that my baseline is guarded. And no matter if I believe it or not, that's going to be what the world sees me as. So I have to work much harder to undo that. Again, it's not a problem if you know it, but if I spent the next 20 years not knowing that, it's a big problem.
Well, I think you hit it though. Had you not had the humility to do that, you would have kept going on for the next 20 years doing that.
And people do. And that's my point, right?
Right.
That's what's out there. It's
Mhm.
20 years of this having no idea. And then they don't know why they're not getting the results they want. And they don't know why it's not working out the way they wanted to. And they're sitting there saying, I'm just the nicest, greatest person. But meanwhile, the rest of the world's perceiving them as the most guarded, difficult person to communicate with.
That is so interesting. I'm so glad you told that story about watching yourself. So, do you continue? I mean, maybe not as much now, but would you recommend everybody to do the rep and then record it and then rewatch it and learn?
Yeah, I think I mean, it's not going to hurt you to do it, first of
Yeah.
all. People change, right? Life
Mhm.
changes you. Maybe you have a different disposition now. Maybe you talk differently. But what I will say is, I went to law school between 2004 and 2007, and now it's 2025. I've spent all those years knowing exactly certain key phrases to say. I know exactly what to wear. I've practiced what works so much.
Mm.
I don't know that I could go back to who I was in 2004.
That's a,
right?
mm-hmm.
So
I love that.
yes, there's a benefit in doing it, but if you've had just repeated success and you're settling your cases and you're not, people aren't calling you guarded, then maybe you've broken through.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it wouldn't hurt to kind of do a refresher, but it is an art that I don't think is valued as, let me put it this way. If you're a business person like myself, what matters is that you win the prize. You have to settle the case. You have to have the money. Okay. The faster you get the money, the better you are doing. So even if you're settling cases, but it's taking you 3.5 years, that's a problem. There's so much money you are wasting. So you have to keep your eye on the prize and just continue to perfect your skills for money faster, sooner, and bigger. And as long as you're constantly trying to do that and not sitting on your hands going, well, it'll eventually settle, then I think you're self-evaluating correctly and you're pushing your practice where it needs to go. But you cannot take your foot off the gas.
I think this is actually a good segue question to ask is I've often heard that failure is our greatest teacher. And we've already talked about humility. Well, let me ask this first because I do want to ask that question because I want to get your thoughts on it. But it was kind of going back to what we talked about before we started actually recording, and that is woman in law or a woman in business and entrepreneurship. And why do you think that is that women are guarded to share knowledge? Do you feel like we're already maybe placed, quote, in a disadvantage that we have to prove that we can hang with the big dogs like the guys? And what advice do you have for women really in law, in business, and entrepreneurship?
Okay. Sorry, it's a hard question. I'm trying to figure out like which way I want to go at it. I think any female in a male dominated field is at a disadvantage because you have to be better than the average male counterpart to even be considered average, right? You have to
Mm-hmm.
overperform in every single way before you get noticed. So that's just a fact, whether it's in the law, medical fields, engineering, sales, it doesn't matter. Men have dominated the working profession in every single area, basically.
Yeah.
So I think women are just inherently at a disadvantage because of that. I think we could do a much better job as women actually trying to lift other women up that are actually doing a good job. I
Yep.
don't just lift any woman up. I have a big issue with that. It's lifting the correct women up that are actually doing well and aren't getting recognized. Or if they are getting recognized, you just lift them a little bit higher so they get more recognition. That's great. I think women definitely feel like they're, if there's a company of 10 people and there's two women in the highest positions, that like there'll never be three, there'll never be four. It's always going to be two. So there's this mentality of like scarcity. Like I can't help Betsy if, I also want to sit at the table because there's not going to be enough seats. And I don't think that's a good mentality at all. And you have to have I think life is so much about perspective, right? Like if you think you're always competing with the person next to you, you are. Or elevate your game so you're not competing. Because who wants to live like that? I don't want to live like that. I want everyone to be successful and we can all be in our own lanes next to each other. We don't have to like crash into each other and we don't have to take over someone else's pie, just get another piece. So I do think people or women specifically, fear being kicked out of the table or like if there's three women at the table and there were previously were only two, you were getting a lot more attention because there was only two of you. And so you looked like you were more of a prize because look how few women can make it to the top and you're one of two, not one of three or one of four or one of five.
Mm-hmm.
And women aren't wrong for feeling that. It's the truth. If there's more women, then it does devalue the fact that you're a female doing that job. But like I said, I mean, do you want to live that way and constantly fear like someone could take over what you have? I think that's the bigger issue is like you have to be confident in your own skill set and who you are. I mean, I have no idea if someone is a better negotiator than I am. And I don't care because in my mind, I'm the best and that's what I'm rolling with. And I do feel that way. I'm not like pretending. I'm not just making that up. I genuinely feel like I've done everything humanly possible to be the best at what I do. And I am the best at what I do. And that's that. And you know, I don't have to compete with anybody else and what they're doing. And so I wish more women had the mentality of like more women at the table is not going to hurt me individually. Because I've yet to have that happen to me. I'll tell you that right now. I mean, I spend a lot of time trying to help other women grow and be successful. And it's not by what I give them, right? Like I'm not getting them a job, but identifying who's not helping you certainly gets you farther. So these little things you can do to help other people will get them ahead, right? If they're aligning themselves with someone that's not in their best interest, but they just have no idea, just pointing that out can change their life. Like what negative impact does that have on me? Nothing. So I do think it's important to get women in positions where they can flourish. And I try my best to do that in any way that I can, because I think it's not right that women get so frustrated they take themselves out of the game. And I say that because I'm one of very few women that I graduated with and that I was friends with that actually has a career in the law, which is so ironic considering I didn't even go to law school to try to be a lawyer. But that's how much it pushes people out.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to see that happen. I want everyone to achieve the most they want to achieve. If they're taking themselves out of the game because that's what they want, that's fine, but that's not what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you couldn't have said it better. I think that I don't know what it is about women. You said focus on you. And one of my mentors said, what you focus on expands. And
100%.
so when you're focusing on the other people, yes, competitive is good. Okay, it's what drives people to be better and great because
You can notice something good in someone else and go, she did that or he did that really well.
yep,
And I want to mimic it or I want to achieve that.
yep,
It's like a healthy competition
yes.
versus well, now I'm gonna, make sure everyone knows that she's not really that smart. Or, in my situation, I'm sure everyone can imagine, Keith gets a lot of credit and he deserves a lot of credit. There's no question. He can stand on his own 2 feet without me, but I can stand on my own 2 feet too.
Hmm.
And that's where I get frustrated that there's this idea that like, oh, well, of course the firm's doing well because Keith's doing so well. It's like Keith is doing well and Angela's doing well. And
Hmm.
Keith and Angela do exponentially well together. And we know that. And I'm not sure why other people don't get that.
And it's ironic too that I think I again I don't know what it is about the woman's mind, but like guys can look at this. Okay, guys can look at the Bruno Nalu law firm and be like, dude, they're a power couple. Like Angela's amazing at mediation and negotiation. Keith is amazing at trial work. But for women, I know this because I've experienced communicating with women. Oh, Angela's only doing well because of Keith's reputation. It's
I
like,
just
what?
chilled. It like bothers me so.
Oh, it gives me the
And
ick.
I should say, I was not worried about that. This was not a factor in why I didn't want to start a firm. Like, oh, like I'm not going to be as seen as great or independent as him because we did everything together for
Yeah.
years. I mean, we did every trial, we did everything. It's only recently that we've kind of done more of a divide and conquer because it just has made more sense. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of murmurs of does Angela even work anymore?
Hmm.
It's like, okay, well, my checkbook says I work a lot. So
I know, and that's the
oh,
best part is you have to say so little because you have so much. And I don't mean that materialistically. I mean that from a greater perspective is you don't have to say anything. They can say and murmur all they want. Hey man, I live a great life.
yeah. And I think like, most of the time I'm just like, oh, whatever. I don't care what people say. Because everyone's just always trying to like take you
For
down and
sure.
you know, muddy the waters.
Yep.
But there is a point where it does start affecting me when I'm in like social situations that I don't think people have a connection to my firm or they don't really know me, and weird things come out. And then I go, okay, this has gone too far.
Yep.
And so that's where I know it really still is a serious problem,
Yeah.
especially when I think I've done a great job of not participating in like the babble. And then when it gets back to you and you're like, oh, okay, I don't think that's cool. I don't think it, and I would love to say that it doesn't affect your overall reputation, but it does. When enough people are saying things, it catches fire, and now things are going down in flames. So I do
Well,
try
they
to.
say that too. One negative review can outbeat the 100 positive reviews.
I know. And it's hard, it's so hard because I'm not a competitive person. Like, I'm competitive inside my own mind and inside my own
Yeah.
firm and with my own cases, but I really don't look outward, and I don't know why I'm like that, but I don't. And so I do ignore it for probably far too long. But I think podcasts like this help, or interviews where you can kind of remind people that, no, I'm actually doing great work. And just because I don't talk about myself all day, I swear I'm still out there doing things.
No, it's really actually been such an honor to hear you speak of your strengths and your mediation and your negotiation skills. Like that alone deserves worthiness and glory. And I don't mean that from like praise, Angela, but I think it deserves a lot of attention that doesn't get enough attention.
I do appreciate it because I went to law school because of this negotiation and mediation program. And it was, it was not considered as great as being on the mock trial team. Mock trial was, everyone looks to the trial lawyers, sort of the prize person, the one that has all the skills. And they do have skills, and they have great skills. And they are very different skills than someone negotiating. And so I would just kind of encourage people to look at themselves at what are their strengths. If their strength is public speaking and the power of persuasion to a jury, then great, be a trial lawyer. But if they're not, and the trial lawyer skill set is unique. I mean, you can learn to be a good trial lawyer to some degree, but you can't become the best of the best if it's not something sort of innate in you.
Yeah.
And I would say negotiation to some degree is the same, but it is more teachable. There's nothing wrong with settling cases for extraordinarily high case value for your client and
Mhm.
getting money in the bank in 90 days. Like, that is amazing. That's why it's fun. I mean, people always ask me, like, do you like being a lawyer? And you're supposed to say that you like helping people. And I do like helping people, but I'm telling you, to me, it's a chess game, and I like to win. And the money in the bank is the win. And then the client gets the money, and then they're happy and they can go spend it. Right. But I'm motivated by that kill. And my kills happen faster, and there's a lot more money coming in. So I get a lot more reward more often. I'm not saying if you're a trial lawyer, you're getting tons of reward. It might be once a year, once every couple of years, whereas mine can be every 3 months, and it's a fun high. So I just think there's a lot of room for different strengths and personalities at the table, but we only seem to want to reward the trial lawyers. They're a little bit glorified, which I find funny because I live with one, and I know all sides of the trial lawyer mind.
Yeah.
It is a fascinating personality and skill set, but there's so much more to the practice of law. Like, I think people view the trial lawyer as knowing all about everything, and they're just such a brilliant mind that have taken years of information and synthesized it, and like they've just worked and worked tirelessly on everything. And it's not true. Their job's at the end. Their skills are at the end. Not to take away from it, but those 3 years were not with a trial lawyer, grooming the file. And that's where I just think people need to kind of understand the balance of personality traits and what you bring to the table, and why things work. You got to have a trial lawyer, but doesn't mean you have to have a trial lawyer for 3 years.
Yeah.
You need people like you. We need people like Sam. We need people like me. Like, there's a lot that goes into the equation that can get a case either ripe for trial or resolved.
hmm Angela, I've been so educated on that because really I do a lot of interviews with trial lawyers, but this has been so refreshing because there is a side that nobody really sees unless they're on the internal side, right? And the people, the trial lawyers, amazing, right? They do get a lot of attention because they're in the spotlight.
Yes.
And you said it so clear to understand is that there's 3 years, and who do you think was grooming and the files and synthesizing and putting strategies together?
Right.
We were.
We were. And that's where it's like to then have anyone question whether I work, most of me doesn't care. And then other times I'm like, I want to know what part of this job I don't do. I guess I didn't do the direct exam of the client. So otherwise it's like,
No, I know. I know. Uh,
and so much of what I do, truly, more so me than Keith, and I think he would say the same thing. I am the one who's evaluating the case value because I do so much of the negotiating, right? But I do need his eyes on it from a trial perspective because I truly don't know to it's not that I don't know to the degree in detail that he does how evidence will land in a trial. I can't answer that question effectively. He can. And if that piece of evidence gets in, what does that do to the case valuation? He can give me those answers. I can tell you what evidence can be masked, changed, or morphed in terms of mediation. I know what I can get away with better than he can because he looks at everything as if it's a trial, and it's not a trial, it's mediation.
mhm.
Right? So having both sides of the brain kind of focused really helps understand where you can, what course is going to get you the best outcome, and what is the real case value, where does it make sense to settle. And if you can't answer that question, again, I would just beg people to, phone a friend that you trust, that you can tell these case facts to. I mean, I have a bunch of friends that call me all the time with their, cases and like bounce ideas off of, and did you have a case like this that had these similar facts? And it just has to be the people you trust, because I can't listen to another lawyer tell me they got a $3 million settlement on a broken toe. Like I can't play that game. That's not how it works. But if you want to explain to me why you got a $3 million settlement because there was a broken toe that turned to gangrene, and you actually explain it to me, and I can kind of get how, wow, that's still an insane outcome, right? But you got to be real with me, and I'll
Yep.
be real. Like, I'm going to explain to you. I think I get a premium on all of our cases. I'm not going to lie, from just doing it for so long. But fundamentally, the case is good and there's good facts, and I'm running with it.
Yeah.
Uh, and people need to understand that these aren't, you cannot just, I just don't like the lawyers that promote themselves as if they're getting these astronomical settlements or verdicts when the facts weren't good. One, it's not good for our profession. If that's what you're doing, it's kind of a problem. But two, it's also just not true. It doesn't work that way. The numbers don't work that way. There's too many people that have to be invested in that settlement number or verdict for that to have worked out, right?
hmm
So
No, I love
maybe
all that.
that's
I think you kind of hit this, but I'm going to ask it in a more direct way. When you said earlier it was hot, things were going bad, what was it that changed the trajectory of it or can, and how do you flip it?
okay. To answer that specifically with that case, I'll be honest with you. I had kicked everyone out, and I talked to the mediator directly because I knew her and I were on the exact same page. And
Mm,
that's what I mean about like videoing yourself, knowing what works, reading the room, knowing your own signals. I've done it for so long, and no one was happy with me. Okay. And when I say no one, I mean no one. I had had it with everyone in my room, and their gripes and their personalities, and they were like, it was not good energy. Like I said, we were all hot. Okay. It was not helping, but the mentality was not, I could see the mediator was struggling, and the mediator shouldn't be struggling.
Hmm.
And so I needed to connect with her in like a real way. And I was very concerned, if I could not connect with her, this was going to be over. And we had spent years to get here. And like I said, this was a situation that both sides were looking to sling mud in the public eye. And every cell in my body knew the minute that happened, this was over. We would lose. And I mean lose like, look, you can still get money, but you can still lose. I knew our best opportunity for the most money was in that room that day, and I had to make it happen. Sent the client away. I sent all of the lawyers away, and I just had like a conversation with the mediator to see if there really was a deal to be made. And the things she said led me to believe that a deal could get made, just quote, not at my number. And, 5 hours later, I got my number. So you can't listen to every word a mediator says as the truth. Okay. You have to, this is my point of sticking to your number. You stick to your number, like doggedly, but that number has to have been calculated so preciously. There's this idea that like, oh, Keith's gotten $100 million verdict, so all of our cases now get a natural 99% increase in value. No, they actually don't. And if that were my attitude and that's what I did, I would settle no cases. There is case value. Do I think I get a premium? Do I think I get a little bump? Do I think I get a little more credit because, look, we will go to trial? Yeah, I think I do. But I'm not taking $1 million case and getting 12 million because of Keith Bruno's last verdict. And you got to live in reality. And I say that, and it sounds so easy and like, oh, I'm just saying 1 + 1 is 2. It is not that easy to be honest with yourself, with your client, with the other attorneys that you're probably co-counseled with about the case value. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not always saying a number that they like to hear, but I know it's the truth. Right. And so I think going back to your point about like in mediation, like, how do you know, like, what's the turning point? Everything I do, it goes down to that number, and nobody wants to hear what I'm saying because that number is so hard to talk about. And it's not because that number is so big or because it's so small or because so anything. People don't like to put themselves in a box because they want to be right. If I tell you, Alex, your case is worth 200,000, and then I get you 20,000, I look dumb. Okay. If I tell you your case is 200,000, I get you 2 million, no one thinks I'm dumb. You're a genius. You got 100 times more. So people don't want to look bad. So they'll say, well, we don't really know. It just depends on how it comes out in mediation. It depends what the mediator says. It really depends what the other side has to say. You're killing your case doing that. You're killing yourself. You're killing your case. You're killing your client. Like I said this before, I'll say it again. You should live your life in the power position in your relationship with your kids, at work, with the mediator, with your case, with your client, at the grocery store. And then you win because you are leading, and you should lead from beginning to end. And it's not comfortable at first. And then eventually it becomes comfortable. And then you realize that's really what people want. They hired a lawyer for answers. They're not hired to be told, I don't know. It depends. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's not. It is not easy to tell a client your case is worth 500,000 when a lawyer before you most likely told them it was worth 5 million. It's not a fun position to be in. But what's fun is when you give them a check for 250,000 of real money in 90 days. And I've yet for a client to be upset with me about the amount of money I put in their pocket, because I am honest with them and I tell them what is going to happen and how it's going to happen. And then it happens within range, right? But that's all everybody wants. Everyone wants some comfort in what's an otherwise very uncomfortable, scary, never probably happened to them situation. Mm-hmm. So lead, don't live in the gray. But to lead, you have to have a lot of time and preparation put into it. And I do treat mediation like a trial. I do not treat it like mediation. I go in there like it's trial. I have a binder, like you'd have a trial binder, I have a mediation binder. And I am ready to present evidence. Now, the beauty with mediation, this is what I don't know that people totally appreciate, because you're not bound by, civil code of evidence and you're not bound by rules of court, I get to present exactly how I want to. I get to, I can't lie, but I get to create a story the way I want to without a judge telling me you can't do it that way.
Hmm.
So imagine the power that you have in that. I mean, clearly I love mediation. I love negotiation. I mean, I love it like truly in my soul. And I think if people went into their cases this way, they'd have a lot more fun because it is fun. And once you kind of know the power that you have.
When you say to be in a place of power, regardless if that's in your personal, professional, at the grocery store, what do you mean by that? Because do you mean like you're always right? Or what do you like expand on what does that mean? Does it mean confidence? Tell me when you say you should always be in power, what does it mean?
I think so. For me, the way I'm saying it is you want to be in charge of your choices, your decision, your life, what you say, what you don't say. It's all your choices. And the more you are determining your outcomes, the better your life will be. And I don't think people live that way. I think people live looking to others and depending on others and going with the momentum of the waves. And all I'm saying is show up at the beach ready to swim. Don't just let it flow. Like have an agenda, have a plan, have an idea of what you're doing. You can show up to the grocery store and there's always those end caps telling you to buy something with like red dye and corn syrup. Like, don't buy it. You went there for vegetables. That's what I mean. It's not just like a confidence, it's an agenda. You're talking to your husband, you already know he's going to tell you something you don't like. We can all see their face. We all know. We all know. And you have choices in that moment, right? You're either going to listen politely or you're going to like cross your arms. You're going to be like you're going to have attitude. Like you're making a choice, right? So what's the power position in that moment? The power position in that moment is to sit back and let them talk. It doesn't feel like a power position, but that is the power position. Do you see what I'm
Oh,
saying? Like you're
gosh, yeah.
making choices every second of every day, how people are going to perceive you, how you're going to navigate that moment. It's when you decide you're not going to participate in life and you're just going to kind of like let things happen. And I'm beating a dead horse, but someone out there is going to listen to this. When
Absolutely.
you take that attitude in mediation, you will not be successful. Mediation is not an opportunity for everyone to talk about things and then you to ultimately agree to a number. It is for you to walk in with a plan. You're going to explain the plan to everyone and you're going to get their buy-in to your plan. That's mediation. And that's not what's generally understood in our profession from everything I've seen. Um, I think because everyone went to law school for trial, that they missed out maybe on how this part of the practice really works. Or, like I said, I don't know that it's valued, which is so funny to me. It's like you're not valuing the one thing that will put money in your client's pocket the fastest. That's odd.
Well, especially when, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but especially when most cases don't go to trial.
Right, but we idolize
Right.
the trial, right? That's why
Hmm.
I find it so interesting. It's like we all know it's not going to go to trial.
Like
It,
most trial attorneys are like, yeah, if you go twice a year, that's good. And it's like, okay,
right.
so to
What are you
just
doing the
add on
rest
to
of the time?
exactly. And so I think this call is going to be so great for all attorneys to listen to because I'm not in a position to speak attorney language, but from what you said, just from common sense, yeah, if that's true, if an attorney always only goes twice a year, and I don't mean only as insufficient,
Right, but
but statistically, they say even the trial attorneys, they're like, yeah, like 90% of cases don't go to trial. So
mhm.
I think this is a skill set to continue to learn and master.
But and that's where I more regularly used to take cases for other law firms to settle. Um, and I loved it so much. I'm not gonna lie. It's
Yeah.
just the greatest. This
Yeah.
was all set up, and then I could just go in like a trial lawyer and just do the mediation. And I was like, this is the greatest job ever. Well, after a while, they just go, okay, you're too big, or whatever, who knows. So I don't do that really anymore. But if you have a good case and it's lined up for mediation, you can still call people like me or Keith or whoever and just get their take on the case evaluation. I mean, I still do it this day with my own cases. Like I still call because someone else might have a similar case.
Mm-hmm.
And look, life changes. What sexual abuse cases used to be valued at are not what they're valued today. The Me Too movement changed everything. So, the value of a sex abuse case today is astronomical, huge.
Hmm.
Never could have predicted this 10 years ago. So
Wow.
there are things that change, that really change the case value. And you should know that. And no one can do enough cases to know everything. You got to start talking to people. And this is what, kind of getting back to like women helping women. I do have a group text of women lawyers that I do really appreciate, because the first 9 years of my practice were a group text of all men and me,
Mm.
which was weird. But that was the truth, and it's just what it was. So it is changing. It's getting better. It's not perfect, but I think we need to do like a lot more of that. And it's one of the reasons I really support, it's a program called WITTS, WITTS. It's Women in Trial Travel Summit.
Cool. Yeah.
It's a female lawyer that started, she loves to travel. So she started this idea of hosting conferences in like unique locations, but only for women. And it's just phenomenal. I mean, she does such an absolutely extraordinary job. And I'm not saying this because we're friends. Like,
Yeah.
she has real talent in setting up conferences. I mean, that's a skill set in and of itself. It's not easy to do. She runs them like a wedding. It's like a 4-day wedding. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And then you have all these female lawyers that I think everyone would agree with me, act very different when there aren't 7,000 men around. And it's a good different.
Yeah.
And really gives you much more of an opportunity to connect with women in a real way. No one's asking me, what work am I doing? And just, what's Keith doing? It's much more about me and what I'm doing and what they're doing, not what their firm's doing or like the big partner at their firm. It's a nice way to kind of actually get to know people. And Lauren's just done such an unbelievable job in making that happen, because most of the conferences are just male conferences. They'll have 8 male speakers and 1 will be female. She's great. And she has somehow gotten people all across the nation to come to these conferences. Everything was planned for me. It was like, this never happened in my whole life. Like, as women, we do everything. I plan everything. I plan every minute of everyone's life, and I tell everyone where to go. And people benefit from that. I don't ever have that benefit where it's like, just show up, at 8 o'clock, the bus is coming. That never happens in my life. So it was 8 days of private chefs, restaurants, transportation taken care. Angela, just sit down and we're going to feed you eggs and you're going to listen to the speaker. I mean, it never happens in my life. I still have never experienced anything like that since I went in 2022, right?
That's
like
incredible.
It's incredible. And she knows it. She knows what she's doing. And she knows
Yeah.
like this is a niche where women just were so used to doing everything, especially like planning, organizing type, things, to get on that plane. And it's just like, it was all taken care of. There was not a meal I had to think about. There wasn't an activity I had to think about. I didn't have to think.
Angela, lastly, where can people connect with you the best? Whether it's other attorneys who want to call you, text you, or whatever. What's the best way to do that?
So the best way, you can go to the website. It's www.brunonalu.com, BRUNONALU.com. There's, a contact form on there. You can email me directly, which is angela@brunonalu.com.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough, and I can't wait to show and share this with
I hope it's good.
Hey, if this episode changed the way you think or gave words to something that you already practice, subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And if you know someone who makes high-stake decisions, maybe solves complex problems and works in gray areas, send this episode their way. Between the Lines is for people who care about how judgment actually works. We'll see you on the next one.